Hello, my wonderful. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm fine. This is still summertime here in Madrid.
Fantastic. And welcome to everyone else. This is Poets Corner, and I'm Rosamund Gravel.
And Delfina.
And this is our first podcast, can't you tell? So, yes, this podcast is talking about the creative process. We hopefully in other episodes will be talking to other creatives about their work and how they produce their work and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are I'd love to ask you a question. So, you're a poet. When did you start first writing poetry?
Okay, poetry bizarrely came to me. I didn't look for it. And it was right after COVID, right after the lockdown. And I think we were only still in lockdown situation.
Mhm.
I've been writing my whole life since I remember, but at the beginning was about cinema and script writing and all that things.
Mhm.
I was really into that. I was studying also and blah blah blah. But then after the lockdown, or I mean during the lockdown, I was really into personal development and sorting things out within me and working a lot, investing a lot of time in that kind of reading. And because of course I was not having a great time regarding with my job, let's
Mhm.
say. I was trying to be an independent person, but working on communication, like branding and strategies and blah, blah. And of course, I always felt that that kind of things never were enough for me. Since I was really young, I always had this feeling that I wanted more, I wanted more from life. I had this thing that burned me out, that I had to do something else with my life, that just going to an office or a 9 to 5 job, that kind of jobs, which is completely okay. I think it was in my case because I had all this planet or space living within me, and I needed to give it space to pull all that things out. And I think poetry came to me in order to give me that space to make a registration of all that process. And I'm still working on that. And of course, it became more frequent in my life. And it has been a process since I first started writing poetry, and now it is kind of different. And also, I've been going to places and read poetry. It is a good thing to talk about. We should probably discuss in a few minutes because we have been together in that kind of places, and I think it is a really good exercise for poet, and also for all the people hearing and healing who attend that place. So yeah, it was like that. Poetry came to me. I didn't look for it. I had never read in my life poetry by the time I started writing it, and it was like that. And now it is still going, and I try to always have a moment to write a little. I'm not always inspired because you need to, I don't know, probably work or go to places or do some stuff that is not really connected or don't allow you to connect to yourself. And that is the way I write, when I'm connected with myself, with my inner self.
So, your themes and what you write about? Do you have any inspiration or any other places that you like to work? So that poetry comes to you, or maybe came to you as a vehicle for your artistic voice. But do you have any sort of, is it inspiration at the time, or can you sit down to write something? So yeah, so that's the kind of like, what's your process question.
Yeah, I get inspired by a lot of things. When I'm calmed, that is not always, of course, it is probably a better moment for me to think or feel about that things that I want to write. For example, sometimes I'm listening to an old song, or listening to a musician in an interview, or an artist, and probably one of the words that they say, it is an inspiration for me. Or probably I'm reading something, it doesn't have to be always like that, but I really, it is not what kind of things inspire me. It is probably more, when is that moment, when is a good moment for me. And I think, as I said before, it is when I am connected with myself, when I am in peace, calm. I do meditate a lot, because I have a really rough mind sometimes, and it takes me to dark places. So in order to avoid that, I have to do a lot of meditation and a lot of sport to maintain all the balance that I need to maintain in order to create. Because poetry, for me, it is a creation, of course. I think all kind of art, it is creation. It is an extension of ourselves. It is something that lives within us, and we only have to allow for it to get it out.
Yeah, I understand. And so do you think that your poetry versus your other writing, it's more of a physical thing and a kind of direct to the source? Is that why you prefer it over the other sorts of writing that you've done in the past?
Yeah, I think so, because in the past, when I was into cinema and script writing and all that things, and I also wrote a novel that I published a couple of years ago, it was more a mental process, if you know what I mean. It was not that I was feeling something. Of course, I had that part too, but I think I was not conscious about that. I just wanted to make it right and write a certain amount of pages and put them together, and in order to make a novel or something like that. But it was a different process, a complete different process. If I compare it with my poetry writing process, it comes from another place. As you said, I think my poetry came and still come from a source, from a bigger place, because as I told you, I didn't look for it. And when I was writing this novel, I was probably looking for it. I was trying to put things together and make a structure. Also, when I was writing a script,
you feel it's like a kind of more pure expression of your kind of arts and how you produce the art, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Poetry is, for me, a different kind of process, and I think it is helping me to heal a lot of things. And I sometimes realize that when I write a whole poem and I read it and I reread it, and I say, oh, okay, this came from me. I didn't know that. I was not aware. And now I can see that I am probably healing something. I mean, I'm still in the process, of course, because I truly believe that that process is going to be on and on until our last day. So I think poetry came to help me healing and register that process, and sharing it to the world. It has been sometimes surprising because a lot of people tell me reading this was kind of helpful because I felt the same way, or it made me feel like that, or it made me remember how I felt a couple of years ago when I was dealing with blah 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 situation. So I think it is a pure thing for me.
That was going to be one of my next question about, what, in one sense, what was the point of the poetry? To connect with others, but it seems that it's, to express yourself, to help others who may be feeling those sorts of ways. But obviously,
I think it helps me, and then in the process of sharing it to the world, I think it probably can help others to feel identified with some person who is putting all this on the table as an extension. And I think that is the beauty of every kind of artistic expression.
Do you feel that poetry should be a vehicle for kind of like protest, or because I know that obviously everybody has their different styles and obviously their own way of being?
Absolutely. I think it is the same as with music. There are a lot of musicians who, poetry, it is really, really near to music. It could be the same thing, there are a lot of musicians doing poetry, and they actually use this poetry as a vehicle to protest. And I think that is art. Putting things out there in nice words, let's say, to make others realize about things, or just probably being there for others, and connect with them, connect with people. And as music makes me feel that way, that I'm not alone. A lot of times I've heard a song and I said, wow, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the only rare person feeling that way. So I think that is really helpful. I think art is just amazing because of that, because it is an expression and a connection, a vehicle as a connection with others. And I think we need that as people, we as human beings, we need that connections, because at the end of the day, the only thing we have is human connections, and also the connection with ourselves. And art helps to reach that connection. So I think it is really important for artists to stand for it.
How do you kind of look after yourself in kind of an artistic way? Because I know that as artists, as creatives out there, we can feel quite a lot, and the very good, the excellent, but also sort of the deep swells as well, some things that are very difficult. And how do you balance yourself and protect yourself to sort of help you be in a place to produce your art? I know that you mentioned you do lots of gym and meditation. Is there anything else that sort of helps you to cocoon your skin, I guess, to not be so raw?
Yeah, as you said, I need to get rid of things that I'm probably blocking myself of being connecting with myself. So if I'm kind of stressed or worried about something, I try to go to the gym, or now I'm learning box and I'm really into it. So I try to do a lot of exercise, workout. And then another thing that I really do always, or at least I try to encourage myself and find the time to do it, it is to pick my notebook, as I always have a notebook with me, and write all the things that probably are in the middle and blocking myself as an impediment for me to reach the poetry, because I'm thinking a lot probably, or because I'm worried about something. So I try to write about all that is worrying me, and some things that got me frustrated, for example, or some stuff that I'm dealing with. So yeah, I use the writing as a tool, as a powerful tool to keep healing and to get rid of all that stuff that separates me from my poetry, because poetry is my real me, my real essence, and all that it is just noise coming from my own mind. So yeah, I prepare my space in that way, like trying to get rid of all these things that don't help.
And in terms of getting your poetry out to an audience, how do you do that? I know that you're on Instagram. Are there any other ways that you're getting your poetry out to people? Are you getting a collection together? And I know that you said that you have had a novel published. Can we look forward to a lovely volume of your poetry coming out?
Right now, what I'm trying to do is to put all this poetry out in social media, as you said, because it is not that I want to write it. I found out that I want to do more. Yeah, I want to create a different kind of content with poetry. It is not just that I want to write a book and that's it.
That sounds really interesting. So is it sort of like a combination of videos and things? Is it kind of like guerrilla street art or sort of?
Yeah, actually, it's actually like that, with video and sometimes music. I like combining all these things together because I don't know, because I also like movies. I like good content. Yeah, I like art in all its ways of expression. So I think it came like that, you know. It started as poetry and like writing, and then today social media, it is a really good vehicle to get to more people, because if you are an artist,
it kind of like reach to a different audience and different many places that you can be at once, really, with your. But it sounds really interesting. Your poetry is that sort of not kind of like, in one sense, the traditional poet's way would be to get a little volume together, get it published. But it seems that you're moving more towards sort of like an intersection of video, music, poetry all together, and being very visual. And it's kind of like the main source of that is obviously at the moment social media, I think.
Yeah,
that sounds amazing.
Actually is. Okay, thank you for your questions.
Thank you. And what's your Instagram handle? For our audience out there who aren't following you at the moment, but they should.
It is Delfina, V, double L, and D as a dolphin. You can find me on Instagram like that. Brilliant. And yeah, I'm preparing a lot of stuff, and I'm trying to post weekly or twice a week, because it is fun for me. So if you want to join me and listen to me, you're most welcome. Okay, we shared 6 months, let's say, sort of, to our neighbors, and we discovered that we both loved poetry, and not just poetry, because the first time I talked to you, you were working on a play. So if you want to talk a little more about this play, that would be fantastic.
So yes, I write plays, and I've got a play coming up about it's like a historical play. So it's a moment in time in the Tudor period in England where these 3 very strong women come together. So you got Queen Mary the First, Elizabeth, who will become Queen Elizabeth, and another lady called Lady Jane Grey, who was a cousin of both Mary and Elizabeth, and she was told that she was queen, but she only reigned for 9, or a lot of historians let us know it's actually 13 days, and then she was got rid of. And it's just a fictional encounter between these 3 women on the night that Lady Jane is sadly going to be, or maybe not be, executed the next day. And it's fantastic. I think it's just got really interesting characters. It's about powerful women in politics, kind of like how we potentially might see ourselves, how we may act in different ways or not. And it's kind of like a slight revision. Obviously, a lot of our history has been written by men, and that Queen Mary the First has always been vilified in England as this awful queen. And Queen Elizabeth, or Elizabeth, was always this like Gloriana, and wasn't she marvelous? And even though obviously it's fictional, it's just to say that maybe our view is maybe not been potentially what it could have been, and that these characters, like everybody, are grey, they're shaded. So I guess it's to give a slightly new shading to these characters, and to pluck up this fairly obscure lady called Lady Jane Grey from history. And again, just think it's a really interesting period of time that the English throne, a woman was going to actually, be the queen properly in their own right, rather than being a consort or a regent. So yeah, it got fantastic actors, fantastic place that it's being put on. So I do hope people can come and see it if you're in London, and enjoy it and maybe get something out of it too. So yeah, that's the play, and it's called Three Queens.
That is really amazing and interesting. And how or where did you get the inspiration for that?
I've always been obsessed by Queen Elizabeth I, and I'd always wanted to write a play based as her as one of the protagonists, or the main protagonists. But then I didn't know what it may have been about, rather just a straight kind of biographical play. And then ages ago, Six was coming out. So Six is the musical about the queen, the Henry VIII's queens. And so kind of all that Tudor revival kind of popped up again. I thought, oh, this would be a great time to write about Elizabeth again. And then, I don't know, ideas just popped into my mind about like kind of like the young Elizabeth. So I know there's been a series about her, but this was a time when there wasn't. You see her as a queen mainly all the time, but it was just a kind of like a transition. So she's not sort of young, but she's not quite queen, and those are very interesting years of having to survive effectively her half sister to get to the crown. And then I was just kind of reading about Mary and Elizabeth, and then I don't know where, from out of somewhere, I was reading about Lady Jane Grey, and I thought, oh, this is really interesting, these sort of 3 different women who all had some sort of power and potential power, and it's a really interesting crossover time. And then I read about sort of the timeline about when they were doing things, and that Jane was killed in February, about a year or 8 months, a year into Mary's reign or so. And then Mary put her to death. And I thought, God, wouldn't it be really interesting if all these 3 people met? And just exploring all the sort of different facets of them. So that's kind of where it came from. But I kind of see things. So I sort of like saw the scene, or I saw this image of Queen Elizabeth, and I was just like, all right, kind of the play is coming. And then, yeah, I kind of wrote it from there.
I think it's really interesting, yeah. And so it is like a mix of true story, and
the characters are real, but the situation is fictional. So yeah, it's kind of historic fiction, I guess. And it's something which is very interesting to write, because obviously, I mean, I love history, and I've done a lot of research on the 3 characters or 4 characters and the time, and I grew up reading a lot, and how you then translate that into a play. And yeah, there's always debate about, should you do something historical, biographical, because it's not quite right with the history for the purposes of what you're trying to show. So it's been very interesting to write. But yes, it's a completely fictional situation, but the characters are from history.
Yeah, amazing. I love that mix. And is there a message that you want to give with this play, or probably not a straight message, or something that you want to say or show through this play?
That's a really great question. So I think what it, for me, it's a lot to do about is, do we sort of toe the party line to survive, or don't we? And what that means to survive, and also to make very huge decisions, I guess, as a woman. And is there a particular way that women should behave? Should we be full of mercy and compassion, traditionally, or do we not have that? And I know that, what's potentially good is the fact that we are all different types of people in various degrees. There is not just like one set, this is what you should be. And I guess putting that into a historical context where the thought was that you should be, and you should have these qualities, and you should act a certain way. So I guess there's that aspect, and I hope it sort of raises questions for people about what would they do, what type of person are they, is that a right or a wrong answer, how would you do it, how would you get that power, is getting power the be all and end all to get your aims because you think they're true, and are they the true aims? And history doesn't look fondly on sometimes things that you think you're doing for the right. So I hope maybe it can start to elucidate those questions or raise those questions in people.
Would you be open for a Q&A after the play?
I hope so. We'll see how it goes. It's dependent, but we will let people know as and when it all gets set up and the what's on offer. But there may well be.
Thanks. It's really interesting, all this process and all the things that you want to share to the world and implant this idea. I think it is really amazing. And you also write poetry, of course. I know you from before, and I know you do. And what about the creative process of writing poetry, if you compare it with play writing process, for example? It comes from a different place? It is more for fun, for example, or as a hobby, or do you want to actually write a book with a collection with all your poems, or you are more into one now and probably, I don't know, the play, and then you are going to want to do something about poetry? And how is that you handle this different process? But I think I'm assuming that they are different. Probably it is the same creative process for you.
Yes, that's a really interesting question. Yes and no. I think they come from the same place, and just like I think also the pattern of words, as you said, something about how poetry is like music and things, and that's how I feel about writing plays. You can see the pattern, and you can see the beats and the rhythm. Wow, I think that for poetry, it's sort of just it's more of a freer bird. If you, as I remember you saying, it's like you said, like writing a book was like more of an intellectual thing. whereas poetry is more as a freer thing. And I guess I feel that too. I guess when I'm writing plays, it doesn't feel as restrictive. And I really enjoy it as well. I kind of need to get it out of my body. And poetry is more of a, I said, it's more of a free form thing, and it's more of a freer bird. Yeah, so they are similar. They probably come from the same place, but they are, I think they're different processes. And I still get kind of like the drumbeat of needing to write. Like if a poem is coming, it's like it has to be let out. And I get that the same with the playwriting and the writing. So yes and no. Yeah,
That's fair enough.
it actually, as I said, it's like really strange. It's sort of, they're both the same thing, but they're not. And yeah, different places, but the core is the same.
And since when you have known that you wanted to be a writer, for example?
Wow.
Or it was more you started to write things and then you said, oh, okay, I think it would be great to write about these characters in real life.
I guess I've always written, so it's like that was just me, that was just part of me. Even when I was very young, I'd write and my mum would say, oh wow, that's a really interesting way of saying things. And so words and language, and I guess that freedom within is kind of like always been there with the writing. And I guess it's sort of like, if you've always, it's like your right hand, it's just kind of like always been there, and you don't, as it's part of you kind of don't question it. It is you. And so it's always been there. I remember like when I was working, I would have my annual leave, and my husband would be away, and I would just like literally write. And that's what I wouldn't even think that that's a strange thing to do, which it probably is, because that was just a way of my enjoyment and my connection. But like to be serious about it, I think I got a few poems published, and it was just like, oh yeah, no, that's good. But I didn't think like, wow. And I think it's a confidence thing. I think, wow, seriously, I could, like, that's what I could be properly. Until quite late in my life, and I just was at a place where I just thought, woke up a bit, I think. And I thought, wow, I could actually do this, and try to do this as my thing, that makes me feel what I should feel, and I'm a better person to everybody, I think, around being a writer. Yeah. So yeah, it's a really, really, really interesting question. Yeah, thank you for asking it.
I think, yeah, I have another question. And as a probably writer or as an artist, do you have anything right now these days that you want to achieve, or you are more just testing things and waiting for something, or chilling and let your things out whenever you have the time, or you are actually trying to achieve something as an artist these days?
I guess I'm trying to achieve as an artist. I mean, I've got quite low self-confidence and things. It's getting better. It is getting better. And it's nice when people have positive stuff back to you. I said,
it was really helpful.
Yeah, I think I've got like, because I've had quite low confidence, I haven't really got out there. So it's like a catch-22, you write all these things, but nothing happens, and you kind of have to push yourself to go out. But now doing that, it kind of thinks, well, you can do this. I mean, it feels like really freaky, and I feel like in the back of my head, I should have like, a proper job, and rather than flying. But flying feels so good. So yeah.
It's necessary. It is something that burns inside. It is really, something wrong is going to happen if we don't do that. I mean, it is within us. It was not our idea. We came with that at the moment we got in this plane, this world. So Yeah.
And I think also I have to very much think, I have tried to stop thinking that it's a selfish thing, and like you've probably got a healthier thing, and it's like just reminds you you're putting that out there. Because I think I asked you sort of like the question about, you know, effectively who you're doing this for, is it, you know, and it's like you kind of think, yes, I am doing it for me, but you are actually helping others, and you're helping others potentially heal or ask them questions and get them excited, and
or just to have a little moment of joy, and that is really helpful.
Yeah. And as you said about healing, like everybody can heal, and I just think that that's really good, and that's really positive, and you know, you are helping. You're not, as I said, I have this sort of self-conscious that it's like a really selfish thing, and I guess that's how a lot of artists are perceived, and creative people are perceived, potentially, that you know, people are showing off and being selfish, and it's actually no, they're sharing, and they're very generous people, because of what we feel and how we feel it, and how we want to show the world to people, and maybe show a kind of like a view of the diamond, and that can be helpful, and as I said, really healing for everybody.
And I think that when you share something, or especially stuff like this, that is really, really profound, and it is really private, and you take the decision to put it out in the world, I think that when you share all that stuff, that private stuff, you allow to others to also share themselves. And I think that is really helpful. And we have lived that when we went to the Poetry Jam. You can see that. You can see all this group of people listening to you, but also putting themselves in a stage. And as you are sharing with the world, everybody, you give space to other ones to put these things out, and also share with the world, and all that help. It is really helpful for us not to feel alone. And I think allowing other people to feel better, or to share their things, that sometimes it is a really painful thing, I think it is a really amazing job or thing to do. And poetry helps with that. So we can create a lot of things around poetry and music and art in general. We have a lot of tools that we can use, and that one is one of that. And I think it is great. It is great, actually.
That's amazing. No, absolutely. You say it so well.
Okay, my friend, I think this is coming to an end. It was a really, really, really pleasure talking to you and listening to you, all that great stuff that you have to say to the world, and all your work, because it takes a lot of work being an artist, because you have to have a lot of discipline and be really committed. So thank you for being there. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for answering the questions. And I really, really hope that everything goes well with the play. I really hope that it's going to be like that.
And thank you too. It was wonderful talking with you and finding out about you and all these exciting avenues where you're taking poetry. I mean, it's amazing, super good. And also thank you to everybody who's listening to this podcast. And
yeah, of course, sorry, I forgot that. I was really into this conversation.
They're really important too. The most important.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
But join us for our next episode, and we hope you've enjoyed listening to Poets Corner.
Yeah, we will wait for you. We will be amazed if you come for another one, for another round. So thank you for being there, for your support, and let's be happy.
Let's be happy. Yay.
Yay.
In a difficult, painful world. It's hard at
Yeah.
the moment, but it's important. And let's be happy.
Worth it.
Let's be happy for everyone, and everyone be
Worth
happy.
it. Yeah, of course. Lots of love to everyone, and don't hesitate to text us if you want to be part of the second podcast. If you're an artist in progress, or if you just want to share something with the world, please don't hesitate.
We are on
my darling. Yes.
We are on Instagram, Poets Corner _ let's be happy.
Perfect.
Come and join us and come and follow us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye. Have a wonderful day and week and day and afternoon, whatever. Bye. Lots of love.